आज़ाद कश्मीर में गूंगे और बहरे बच्चों की मुफ्त तालीम व तरबियत का इदारा कश्मीर इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ स्पेशल एजुकेशन कायस आपके तावन का तलबगार अंसारी वेलफेयर ट्रस्ट यूके बाखलिपन सोन कोड 201188 account number 508. Assalamualaikum and good evening. Welcome to the Zoheb Show. This is my weekly program discussing important community and well-being related topics. I am your host, as ever, every Thursday at 8 p.m. Zoheb Sadiq, aka Zoe. If this is your first time tuning in, you can get involved by tuning in on our website, which is www.aapkiawaz.co.uk. Also, we are broadcasting to two separate apps as well, Radio Garden and Hindi's Radio. And we're also on the Facebook Live, which I'm sure people are watching right now. So if you are watching us on our social media or on the live stream right now, please do let us know that you're watching. Give us a hello, give us a hi, send us a comment, whatever that may be. And if you're somebody who wants to actually phone into the studio, you can do that as well. So as we have the discussion with my esteemed guest tonight, you can call in on the studio number, which is 0121 682 8142. Now, before we begin tonight's episode, there has been some sad news today that Her Majesty, Her Royal Highness the Queen Elizabeth II has sadly passed away, and everyone here on behalf of Radio Aapki Awaaz would like to acknowledge that, and also we'd like to pass on our thoughts and prayers to the royal family. So we just wanted to start with that. Now, my guest for tonight is somebody who has actually served publicly. He is somebody who is very well known and is somebody who's very well respected, worked in many different sectors. And my guest for tonight is Mr. Waheed Salim. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. First of all, let me also pay tribute to Her Majesty the Queen for her 70 years of public service. She's one of the longest reigning monarchs in the world, and her stoicism and public service was second to none. And my thoughts and prayers are with the royal family and also the nation as they mourn the passing of our Queen, Queen Elizabeth II. She was a epitome of what is public service. Her 70 years of reign, never put her foot wrong, really was what gave her all to the nation, and not just to the nation, but also to the Commonwealth as well. She was head of state for a number of Commonwealth countries as well, and the nation will be, as I said, in mourning, but also will reflect on her amazing service, and hopefully will be able to show and share their experiences and their thoughts of the Queen. So I just wanted to just also acknowledge that as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think I echo those words, and I think everyone on behalf of our station, the colleagues here, and I'm sure everybody watching here will also share the same thoughts as well. If anyone wants to actually leave any comments or just any kind of condolences, or if you want to share anything about her Royal Highness, any messages that people do want to send, or any reflections on today's news, please leave them in the comments, as well as any discussions or topics that we do cover in tonight's conversation. We do welcome all comments and suggestions. We do encourage, just please, no profanity, so do keep it clean. And like I said, we would like participation from the audience, and hopefully we do get that. Now, Waheed, you just want to give a quick intro about yourself?
Sure, yes. As I said, my name is Waheed Salim. I was the former Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner for the West Midlands. I served in that role for a year during the pandemic, and before that I was the Assistant Police and Crime Commissioner for a year as well. My background has been in public service in a number of different roles, both nationally and also locally. I chaired a number of charities. I've been a trustee of a number of charities. I've been non-exec director of a number of different boards, including serving 8 years on the Birmingham and Solihull Mental Health Trust. Started my career in the NHS and then moved into different other sectors, including housing, running a business, and providing strategic management consultancy service, as I do now, to different public sector organisations. I'm currently working for Birmingham Adult Education Service, supporting them in engaging with the local community, but also engaging with employees. More of that a bit later on in the show. So I've also was the first Muslim Pakistani to be the chair of the Lunar Society, which is a historic society going back to the 18th century. It was started off by the greats of the city, including Chamberlain and others during the Industrial Revolution. So it was a pleasure to serve as the first Muslim and Pakistani chair of that society, and also the first Pakistani to hold the role of a deputy police and crime commissioner across the country. So there's 43 police and crime commissioners, and there still hasn't been a Pakistani Muslim police and crime commissioner, and I was the only Pakistani deputy police and crime commissioner. And unfortunately, we still not have that yet. But hopefully, inshallah, one day we will have better representation at that level as well.
And I just want to ask on that note, you mentioned representation. You mentioned obviously being the first Muslim Pakistani, kind of person to hold that title. We'll get into the specifics about what you did, as part of the the police crime commissioning and the other roles, that you hold. But what did it mean to you when you were told that this is what you're going to be doing now, and that you're the first Muslim Pakistani representative? What was that? How did you take that news?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it wasn't about representing the Pakistani community. I serve the community and the society across the West Midlands, irrespective of what the background is. But what it was is that I was proud to say that I was the first Muslim, first Pakistani in that role, and it was a burden as well in terms of having to make sure that I did everything above board. I was kind of there doing my bit, showing that I was doing my bit, and pouring 110% into the role, which I hopefully did. The eyes are always on you, especially if you're from a particular background, as we know. I was under a huge amount of scrutiny. Everything I said, was taken in different ways. I had, papers and news outlets going back into my Twitter feed and finding out, what I said 10 years ago. Twitter wasn't around 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and I can't believe that news outlets had time to go through my hundreds and thousands of tweets just to find one thing that they can criticize me on. But that's public life. I had to accept the fact that I was in a very high profile role, and I had to accept the fact that I was going to be scrutinized and criticized and taken apart. But alhamdulillah, with the grace of Allah, and I had a very strong resilience, I had a very thick skin. I was going into a political role, which I knew you had to have a kind of a strong and thick skin to get through, which I did. But I also had amazing support from the Police and Crime Commissioner and the office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, all the kind of civil servants and people who work in there, who provide an enormous amount of kind of support and backing as well. And I have to give it to the Police and Crime Commissioner at the time, David Jameson, who stood behind me and said, I don't care what people are saying. He's the best person for the role. I have every confidence in him, and I'm going to appoint him as the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner. I hope that the people and those people who did see me did say that a good job. And when I left, there's tribute the fact that people did come to me from across the whole different kind of political sphere, and also from different organisations and different people I was engaged with to pay tribute to the work I was doing, and that was acknowledged, which is really good. That it was acknowledged. So yeah, it's kind of, you have to accept it, but you shouldn't really have to put up with it. But that's the way life is, and you just have to get on with it.
Yeah, I mean, look, being a public servant, or being somebody who works in that sector, obviously comes with its challenges. It will come with with many, I suppose, obstacles and goals, and you're going into something which as you mentioned, you were scrutinized, people looking at your social media, which is amazing, isn't it? How nowadays, like, anybody who is in the public eye, the first thing people will look at is their social media. And what I really wanted to kind of hone in on is, because people are probably thinking, well, what is the deputy PCC? What's he on about? So you just want to explain kind of what that role is exactly?
Sure, yeah. So the Police and Crime Commissioner is elected representative, and the role isn't about. So we're not police officers. So be clear about that. We don't direct the police. So we don't direct police in terms of operational policing matters. But what we do is hold them to account. So my role was to hold the chief constable to account, to make sure that they were delivering to the public. We had oversight of their budget, and to make sure that the money that was given to policing, and it's quite a large budget here in the West Midlands, the second largest police force after the Met, £680 million, quite a lot of money. So we had to make sure that money was spent in the right way. It was delivering for the public, and we also set what you call the strategic direction through something called the Police and Crime Plan, which is published on the priorities of the Police and Crime Commissioner. So one of my roles was to make sure that those priorities were being delivered, not just by the police, but we also had a wider role around the criminal justice system, so courts, probation, prison services, etc. And we also commissioned services as well, intervention, prevention services. So part of my role was to oversee that, to make sure that we're spending the money in the right places, that we're commissioning services, we're looking at policy. So we're making kind of policy statements and influencing national government, influencing different organisations, and bringing people together to actually deliver for the communities that we serve. So we, in essence, we were the voice of the public in that space. And my role specifically was to make sure that I supported the Police and Crime Commissioner in that role, and had kind of the responsibility of actually delivering. So I had a number of portfolio areas, and I had to deliver against those, and obviously develop that kind of links with the community. So to do a lot of outreach, a lot of media work, a lot of engagement work with young people, with businesses, with others as well, to listen to what their concerns are, and then to take those back to the police and to other agencies, and make sure they're actually doing something about it.
Yeah. I mean, wow, sounds like a really sounds like a really vital role to me, and I do believe that you mentioned a key word before, which is what this show is about, or one of the aspects of the show is, community. I just want to get your thoughts on kind of what does that word mean to you?
So the community is the people, in essence, it's people will come from different backgrounds, have different needs. So the word community to me is to engage with the people who live in particular areas or come from a particular background. So community could be a place, let's say Alum Rock, which I spent quite a lot of time here, or it could be a community of interest. So Pakistani community, or the Sikh community, or even the community could be even ex-offenders, for instance. We obviously wanted to make sure that they didn't get back into the criminal justice system. So that's a community as well, elderly people, etc. So community means different things to different people, and it's all about trying to understand what those particular needs are and to work with them. So it isn't about telling them what the best thing is. This is for us to listen. So people in public office is to listen to them and then to try and do your best to serve them in the best way you can. And we can't do everything, resources are limited, powers are limited, etc. But what we can do is be accountable to them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And, as I mentioned, community, is so important, isn't it? And, I do believe, with what we've experienced the last few years with the pandemic and now, it's like even with today's news, it's interesting how we've had the unfortunate news about Her Royal Highness. If you're just joining us, by the way, we paid a tribute at the beginning, about the Queen, Queen Elizabeth. And what's interesting is now almost like, and we're not trying to draw comparisons here in any way. So, but what's amazing is that when you have such a public figure or a public servant, and within your role, you've obviously, you thrived in that role, you enjoyed it, you did it, I'm sure, with all your passion. But then you've obviously come away from it. How was that feeling when you decided to then step away?
Well, it wasn't a decision I made. Unfortunately, it was the way that it is. It was an appointed role. So the Police and Crime Commissioner appointed me at that point. When he stood down, he retired. David Jameson, he retired at the elections. A new Police and Crime Commissioner was elected, and they then decide who they want in their team. And I wasn't invited back for whatever reason. That's entirely up to the elected representative. That's the way political appointments are. I was sad, because I enjoyed it. I wanted to. I started a lot of things. I did kind of finish a lot of things, but there was still a lot of work that needed to be done for as far as I was concerned. I would have been kind of. It would have been really good if I did carry on, because then I would have been able to see some of that work done, especially the work I was passionate about in terms of victims, in terms of make sure the police is more representative of the community, in terms of trying to deal with the actual causes of crime and reduce kind of the reoffending and improve community safety, make it better for people. So that's the kind of what I wanted to continue, because those things like that can't be done in a year. It takes a bit longer for that to. It's a journey. It's kind of a process you have to do. You have to break a lot of barriers. You have to bring a lot of people together, and that takes time. Bureaucracy, is one of those things. It's great when it kind of works, but it's really frustrating when it kind of stops you from doing things. But you have to kind of facilitate through that. So, but it was one of those things that you have to accept and move on, which I did. I still I'm involved in different things as well, and I continue to be, because that's the way I am. I'm passionate about kind of giving and serving the community. So although I'm a trustee of Midlands Air Ambulance at the moment, which is a regional charity that provides ambulance services. I'm a trustee of Edgbaston Cricket Foundation as well, and I sit on the Birmingham City University's Business Advisory School Advisory Board, and I'm also on the National Community Voluntary Services Honours Committee. So that decides on honours for the community voluntary services sector. So I'm still doing a lot, still doing a bit, because I guess that's what it's in your nature, isn't it? Once you're in that space, it's very hard to
break out of it. To remove yourself. And you're taking the words out of my mouth there, because one of the questions I was just going to ask you was, you say you're involved in a few things. I think that's a complete understatement, because I know you're involved in many things and many respectable roles, and roles that I do believe that you're making a positive impact on. And one thing I was going to ask you was, you hit on something which is really important, ladies and gents, where he just said something about serving. And often when we're part of a community, we don't think about the roles that we play either as part of a community, or the roles that we play, whether it's in our jobs, whether it's in our families, extracurricular activities. But you mentioned a really key word there about serving. And what I want to ask you was, is that something that's always kind of been in your nature from a young age?
Actually, it has been. I'm not sure where I got it from. Maybe if you go back to your Muslim upbringing and Islamic teachings, is always you serve God and you serve Allah, of course, but you also have a responsibility to serve the community. And Prophet ﷺ was a great advocate, a great role model for that. Where he served the community, and that's an important kind of responsibility. So that's great. And ever since I have been young, I mean, I guess I started even when I was school. When I was engaged with the school council, I was involved in the local community. I was a chair of a youth forum at 16. At 18, I became a director of a regeneration board. I was the youngest kind of person ever to sit on this board. I had to get legal advice apparently just to see if I could actually sit on this board in terms of having a directorship of the board. And I just continued. I just continued that process. Even though I went into the public service, the public sector, I went into the NHS. I always still managed to keep a trustee role or non-executive role, or engaged in the community, being kind of active in the community with my full-time role, and I just continued that throughout the period. I don't think there's been a time since I was 16, which is quite some time ago, that I haven't been in a role or I haven't served in one capacity or another with the community. So I guess it's always been there and probably will continue to be there. Because once you're in it, it's very difficult to kind of step back. Because you want to serve, and it's I could have gone in. So I graduated from the London School of Economics. I could have stayed in London, never came back. I could have kind of gone straight into the private sector, probably earned a lot of money, and not be here. But that was not in my nature. My nature was to come back to my community, was to serve my community, was to
you had a vision,
make a difference.
You had a goal. That's what you wanted to do.
Absolutely. It was so even before I went to university, as I said, I was involved in the community. So I had had the opportunity of going to one of the best universities in the country. I took that opportunity and learned a lot from that, and I wanted to bring that back. And use that knowledge that I had in terms of, I did social policy, which was a degree about public policies, about how what the public service is and all the rest of it. Was to kind of use that and bring that back and try and make a difference to my local community. And my local communities are kind of the whole of the West Midlands, not just where I live, but kind of the whole of the West Midlands kind of thing. And I did kind of try and do that, and did that through different roles and different, both my kind of paid roles in the public sector, but also kind of voluntary roles as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And the key words that we're getting, the key messages that I'm taking from this, guys, is ladies and gents, is the fact that Wahid is a big advocate and an ambassador of various organisations that support the community, that they push the community, and that he is essentially somebody who is I'd like to say, if I can say this, breaking barriers and influencing communities in a way that maybe we don't think about it naturally in terms of what the word community is and what that stands for. I would invite comments and questions, guys. So if anyone does have any comments or anything that they'd like to ask Wahid, or if there's something that's resonated with you in this discussion so far. It's a fascinating discussion, guys. So we're talking all about community. We'll be talking a little bit shortly around things like the living costs. What advice does Wahid have around that, and also other projects that he's involved in as well. But if anyone does have any comments or questions, please do leave them below in the comment section. If you'd like to phone the studio, you can phone on 0121 682 8142. But we would invite questions and comments from the people that are watching. Now, Wahid, I was going to say you were a public servant. You are a public servant. You volunteer. You hold pivotal roles. You mentioned West Midlands. Is it the fire ambulance?
Midlands
Air Ambulance. You mentioned the Adult Education Service. I also believe you had a role within the ABCC, Asian Chambers of Commerce. So there's you are somebody who's held all these. Who's held all these influential roles within these organisations, and And the one thing I want to really ask you is, and this links to like a well-being point of view, because that's the other aspect of this show is, where do you get the time to do all of this? It's the one thing you'll always hear me ask on this show. You ask everybody, because we have every guest on this show is influential in some way, or they are providing so many tips, and they do so many things, and they're supporting the community. And then I always ask, because we're all working, we're all busy, we've got families, but then you've had all these fantastic roles, but then so where do you get time for yourself, and how do you manage your time?
That's a very good point. So I have started during lockdown. Actually, I started to get more active in physical health and started to run, started to look after myself a bit more, started to go to the gym, and that way that has kind of helped me through the stresses and strains of life. As you get older, it becomes more of an impact. When I was in my 20s, it didn't matter at all. It was 150 kind of percent straight in, go, and there's no impact at all. But now, as you get a bit older, it does take a toll. So it's kind of that well-being thing is very important, and taking that time away for yourself, for your mental health, for your physical health is important. So I run, I walk, I go to the gym, and that's given me a more sense of peace and sense of kind of alternatives just to than just to being stressful roles and stressful jobs. Obviously, I have my faith as well. Obviously, as a Muslim, we pray, and during that time you reflect, and during that time we have time to slow down and just to thank Allah for everything we have. And that's great for my mental well-being as well, because I just find that just taking that 5-10%, 5 or 10 minutes out of your day just gives you a bit of a sense of purpose. And kind of gives you a opportunity to just, as I said, reflect, but also to stop and thinking about all the other things that you're thinking about all the time. So those are the way I've kind of managed myself. I don't think it's thankfully or not. Otherwise, I don't have a family. I don't have kids. I'm sure if I did, I would probably have a different take on life. But I don't, so that gives me a bit more time to do other things as well. So
that's right.
I come across a lot of people who are very busy and have families and do a lot for the community, and I pay tribute to them, to be honest, because it's not easy. It's not. You have to look after yourself, and otherwise you just get burnt out, and you're not going to be good for anybody. So absolutely. This is very important. I always encourage people to get involved. I always encourage people to serve their community, but also would encourage people to look after themselves as well.
Well, there's a phrase in there that's commonly used, where they say, don't live to work, work to live. Which essentially means that you just said, don't burn yourself out. Make sure that you're putting your needs first, and that you are essentially, you're working to either sort of provide yourself with, with all the things that we do in our daily lives to enjoy ourselves, because that's why we work. However, what we've seen I would say in the last few months is that there is now you could say, a bit of a crisis in regards to how people are, maybe struggling with living costs, energy bills, even fuel costs are still quite high. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that at the minute. Like, what's your take on that?
It's very difficult for people, and one of the things that I'm really concerned about is the impact of the cost of living crisis on people, but also on the crime levels as well. So we do see in a recession increase in crime levels because people are desperate. So they'll go and shoplift, they'll go and commit crime to try and sustain themselves, which is really difficult and unfortunate. And so, it's very important that government intervenes. It's very important that we help those who are in dire need, especially those who are the most vulnerable in our society. And we're also seeing impacts on people's ability to be able to just afford normal things, eating, heating. People are making a decision on if they're going to heat their house or if they're going to eat in the winter that's
Yeah.
coming up. And that's an awful position to be in. We are the fourth or the fifth, depending on who you ask, the largest economy in the world, and we still have potential people in significant poverty, and who are extremely vulnerable and need our support. So, there's a role here to play for people in the community to look after their people, look after their neighbours, look after the elderly, to try and support them as much as they can. And we saw that phenomenal support during the pandemic. We saw people giving their time, giving huge amounts of food. During that pandemic period, I was as a deputy CEO. I went around and visited a number of organisations, and the work that they were doing was absolutely amazing. People were giving their time, as they giving food, giving money, etc. And that's now difficult now. I mean, people, I still been out on a number of to visit a number of food banks, for instance, in my current role, and people, those people who are running food banks are saying, actually, all their donations are drying up. Because people can't even afford to feed themselves, never mind give money and food to food banks. So they're having to rely on donations, having to rely on big supermarkets to donate food as well, because they're not getting that donation from members of the public. So we are going into and are in a very difficult position, a bit difficult period here for people. And the government's announcement today on freezing the energy prices, the cap on energy prices, will have some positive impact, but more needs to be done. These are world events that are having a massive impact. Inflation is running at 10-12%, interest rates are going up, people will feel that squeeze, and there is a role here for government to play much more active in the economy, to actually intervene in the economy to try and support the people, especially the most vulnerable. So and one of the things that we're doing that is through the benefit system as well, and to increase the increase benefits for those people, so that they can they can buy food, and they can pay for their energy as well. And also, this is about creating employment, sustainable employment as well, growing the economy, ensuring that the system is there to for people to get into jobs, especially those who need the jobs as well.
Yeah.
And we're also seeing the high energy prices impacting on public services as well. Although public services have to pay for it doesn't come free. The energy costs, they have to pay for that from budget. So things are being squeezed as well, which means that that's going to have an impact on the ability of public agencies, local authorities, police, etc., to be able to provide a service to members of the public. So we're going to see a double whammy around that. Reduction of people's ability to spend and to sustain themselves, and then bigger impact on the public services, public agencies to be able to provide their service. And I welcome the news on Birmingham City Council and other councils across the country who are trying to support the local community by having these heat banks, as they're calling them, where people can go in libraries and leisure centres, etc., to keep warm over the winter period, so they don't have to keep heating on in the house. So at least that's something towards that. But there's only so much that the local authorities and others can do. We need a long-term solution here, and we need interventions in the economy so that the economy can grow and people can benefit from that.
Yeah. I mean, do you think, obviously, I think the government is trying to find solutions, and obviously now with the recent changeover of the PM and the cabinet, we've seen that, they are attempting to find solutions. Do you think that do you think that there's more that maybe we can do as communities ourselves?
Yeah, there's always a role for communities to play, but there's only so much the communities
Yeah.
can do in these circumstances. As I said, when the pandemic was there and people, were able to, we saw the amount of goodwill and the amount
Support
of people
networks.
support and were providing, and that is extremely welcome. But as I said, now we're in a position where people can't even sustain themselves and we're trying to support others, and that's where the government needs to come in. And I don't want to be political, but we do have a government who's from a particular background, so the chances, great diversity. I've got to give the Prime Minister on appointing a diverse cabinet, but majority of there's a big majority of, I think I was just reading today, 69% of the cabinet were from public school backgrounds. They come from a particular socio-economic background. Do they understand really what it's like to live in Alamorock or live in Handsworth or Lascelles or Aston on the breadline? Do they know what it's like to make having to make decisions every single day about can I feed my kids, or do I need, or can I, or do I have enough money to put the heating on, or can I afford a school uniform, or can I afford to get to give them something to help them and to give them some leisure activity, etc. Those are difficult decisions that people have to make every single day, and I just fear that that's not getting through to a government that has come from a particular socio-economic background, and that's where it's important for people, for them to look beyond what they have experienced and understand what it's really like to live in this country at this particular point in time, and the impact that's having on people. So, cutting income tax will only, it only will benefit people in work. If you can't even get into work, you're not going to really benefit from a reduction of income tax. People on the poverty line are most likely not going to be in employment. They're going to be unemployed. So, it's not going to have a massive impact on them. It will have an impact on people in work, and not everybody who is working is rich. Honestly, people who are working still will suffer from poverty, still will have what we call in-work poverty. So despite the fact they're earning, they're not earning enough to sustain a standard of living, and some of that will have some benefit, but it's going to be the richest people who are going to be the most beneficial of a tax cut. So it's a better way of doing that. As I said, nothing about increasing benefits in this space. Nothing about giving support to the most vulnerable through additional energy relief. So the previous chancellor did give some additional funding. So everyone is going to get £400. People on benefits and those who are on pensioners will get additional money on top of that. But that's a short-term fix. This is potentially going to be next 2 years. We're going to be suffering from high energy costs because of the world economy and where the world is going. So they, as well as a short-term kind of intervention, there is a real opportunity here to actually look at the long-term economic growth and long-term aspects of this. And it's very interesting how Western economies have moved away from manufacturing, moved away from having gas storages and oil storage. Whereas if you actually look at America's having suffering less from this world increase in prices of gas and oil, because they have a significant amount of reserves, and they also produce as well. Produce oil. America does produce oil. America does have gas and produces gas, but also has significant reserves of gas. So their kind of impact is softer than Europe and UK is. So I think there's a kind of a real opportunity here for governments to actually make a real intervention that's going to have a big massive impact on people.
It's a fascinating discussion, guys. I mean, we're talking about how communities can be supported. What can we do to maybe ease the current situation? And if you're somebody who's been affected by the recent rise in living costs, maybe you're somebody who's looking for help or support or advice, please do comment. Even if you're watching the replay, do leave a comment, and then we'll make sure that the question either reaches our station, or we'll direct the question to our guest tonight as well. So like I said, if anyone has any comments or thoughts or reflections, anything they want to ask, please do leave a comment. We had a few people saying hi before, and they were obviously joining in the viewing of this. But if anyone does have any questions, please either comment on the Facebook Live or call our station on the studio number, which is 0121 682 8142. That's something I want to something I picked up on is what you said before, because we like to obviously give useful nuggets or tips and advice. You mentioned that people in the cabinet, a large or a fairly large percentage of those individuals now, they went to public school, and also you mentioned yourself how community plays such a vital role, and regardless of what your background is, you can still achieve and succeed in various roles, as you've demonstrated. What's your advice to those people who are maybe listening to the show now, thinking like, well, I come from, I don't want to name specific areas here, but, I'm not as privileged as the next person, or I've got friends or family who are a bit more privileged than me. They go to better schools, or they've got better opportunities outside of school, or the activities they do, and, the income sort of, the income thresholds and whatnot. What's your advice to those people who are less privileged and they want to maybe get into maybe a similar kind of thing that you've gone into? What's your advice to them in terms of like how they can maybe succeed?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, I'm not privileged, and don't ever come from a privileged background. I actually went to a local comprehensive school, and I was just very lucky to, with the grace of God, to get to a very good university, the School of Economics, and then from there move in. So I'm not going to sugarcoat this. It is difficult. You have to work 110% more than those who do come from privileged backgrounds. We talk about in this country about equality of opportunity. We talk about breaking down socioeconomic barriers and people achieving, etc. But there is still a class system in this country, and people at the top of industry and the top of government and the top of civil servants all come from a particular background, unfortunately. But things are changing.
I was going to say that.
We do have see people who are breaking those barriers and moving up and becoming chief executives and becoming kind of civil servants and cabinet ministers from different backgrounds and going into politics, etc. But not enough. So we don't have enough representation, not even in public service, not even in public agencies. There's no, we don't have any kind of black or ethnic minority chief constable in this country. We have one black. Even here in the West Midlands, we have one black assistant chief constable, which for a diversity as the West Midlands is the region. The West Midlands is. We should have more. So one of the things I was trying to do was break down some of those barriers, hold the police to account to say, right, okay, what are you doing about representation? Because that's important. Getting people into those positions matter for a number of reasons. One, because they will then understand and provide a better public service, and we've seen countless research and academic evidence which shows that having a diverse leadership in public service, but also in private sector, gives you a better outcome, gives you a better service provision, gets you better better things, and being able to deliver for the people, so you understand the needs of people. Secondly, it matters because they're role models. They can see the next generation of young people. If they see people like them in positions of authority, they will then work hard to get to those positions, because they say, well, actually he can do it, so can I. If they don't even see people like them, they will start saying, why would I even bother?
Yeah.
Why would I spend all my time trying to get through, university, get into these positions, and try and work hard to get
Yeah.
up the ladder?
I was just going to say, do you think that's important that young people see, other individuals that they want to, mirror or that inspire them? Do you think that's important?
That is
Yeah.
extremely important. That's what
Yeah.
we're doing in policing as well. We had a number of role models who are in senior positions in the police, going out, engaging with local communities, and during my time, we saw a really positive response. We saw ethnic minority applicants increase significantly. We saw people coming through those. Through the process increase significantly. We saw a number of ethnic minority officers moving up the ranks, up to chief inspector, superintendent level, because that was a passion of mine and the PCC's, and we were holding the chief constable, holding the police to account around that. We were saying, so every time a promotion process happened, I was there with the chief constable, deputy chief constable, saying, right, how many percentage of ethnic minorities, which from Asia, from Pakistani, black communities, broke it down. How many applicants were there? How many people went through, and how many people were appointed? And they had to account for that. They had to say, and in a lot of cases, when I started these kind of conversations, there weren't enough coming through because the whole process wasn't really fair. So it kind of got them to change the process, and then we saw some nuggets of positivity coming through. We saw some green shoots, coming through, but it wasn't enough. For me, it was too slow, and I needed to do more. And that's one of the things I kind of regret, was that I didn't have enough time to kind of really push them and see that through, so that we can, get a first ethnic minority kind of not a first, but more ethnic minorities in senior ranks to assistant chief constable, deputy chief constable, and even chief constables. So that's the kind of systems that needs to happen. But what I also found, there was significant barriers being put in place for bright ethnic minority people to get through. And we have to just accept the fact that there are barriers there, that people have to kind of navigate through these barriers and get into those positions. And this is both in the public sector, but also in the private sector, I've seen as well. What there is, if there is a real commitment from the top of these organisations, one of the things they need to do, they need to change the institution and change the way that they are operating, in order for that to actually occur, for the change to actually occur, for people to come through. And it's unfortunate we've been having these conversations. I've been having these conversations for 20 years, and we're still in that position that we're not getting that through. And I mean, I don't want to label institutions as institutional racism, but there is that, unfortunately. That we do see that kind of. I'm not saying individuals are racist. I'm saying is that the institutions aren't fair. They are. Everything is based on a white kind of background, and they don't see that they how to change that to be able to enable people to get through. I'm not saying they to give people from Pakistani or from an ethnic minority background an advantage. What I'm saying is they need to make sure the system is fair, and so everybody gets a fair crack at the whip. And we see that doesn't happen. Majority of my career, my early career was in the NHS, and NHS is notorious for this. It is one of the worst organisations in terms of institutional racism. And I'm not saying that. There's been academic reports after reports after reports, independent reports, which are saying that, which are backing that up. And the NHS still hasn't changed. It's still in that process in that system. So and I got up to a assistant director level, and I was the only ethnic minority assistant director in the whole of Birmingham. And there was 3 primary care trusts in Birmingham, and I was the only assistant director. How can that be? I'm sure there's loads of other bright, good people who are in the system, but they weren't getting through. they weren't being given the opportunity to actually get up the ranks and given the opportunity to be able to get appointed to those roles. And one of the things that really frustrates me is this concept of fairness. In the public sector, we have to advertise all the roles, and everybody has the opportunity to apply and go through the system. That's all kind of rubbish, really, because I have seen this time and time again in different organisations when they know who they want to appoint, so they go through this system, through this process, just to get to a point where they're going to appoint the person anyway. So they're wasting money and time and effort to go through a process when they've already made the decision who they're going to appoint. So we need to kind of stop all that and give that opportunity. So one of the things I was doing in the system was making sure that when I was appointing people, my team was very diverse, and I also gave opportunities for my team to go and develop so that they can go and one of the things I'm really proud of when I was in that position was that all of my managers were promoted, and I wanted them. I didn't want to be my team for longer than a couple of years. I wanted them to get promoted and go off and carry on, because I wanted other people to come in so that they can get promoted as well. But that wasn't always the case. That wasn't the position that people were given. And I found that in the police as well. There's a lot of nepotism, a lot of favoritism, a lot of people giving their mates because they look like them, they sound like them, and talk like them, and walk like them opportunities. Whereas ethnic minorities, and especially Muslims and Pakistanis and people from black communities, weren't giving those opportunities. So it's and even though the chief constable, who was still there, absolutely had a commitment for equality, diversity, had the absolute commitment for ensuring diversity in the ranks. The system wasn't allowed, wasn't behind that. And I'm talking about system is the middle management. I'm talking about the whole kind of structure of the organisation. So even though the top person is absolutely committed and there's sincere commitment there, absolutely, the system wasn't really geared up behind that position. And so it's important that we kind of look at that and try and change some of that. And the only way you're going to change that is by getting people in those ranks, getting people into positions or senior positions. And I hope people who struggle to get through that also look back to make sure that they keep the door open. And that's one of the things also that's important. Is that just because you've got to the top doesn't mean you should draw the drawbridge and not allow other people. In fact, it's your responsibility and your moral obligation to make sure you're supporting people from underrepresented groups to get to move through as well, and that's important. And as I said, it's going to take a long time for that to happen. It's going to take a long time for things to change. And to be fair to the NHS, there has been some change. You can see in Birmingham, Black Country, where we do have ethnic minorities as directors level now, board director levels, but more needs to be done, and that's not the kind of representation of a city of Birmingham, for instance, where there's only one ethnic minority on a board, or there's only one non-executive director, or a couple of non-executive directors. We need to make sure that there's proper representations across the piece, but also make sure that there's fairness and opportunity for people.
Yeah. I was going to say that, I think sometimes it's easy for us to look at what we've done and think that, like you were saying, that you've been involved in things for so many years and that we're still in the same position. But I argue otherwise. I think that the roles that you've held and the processes that you've been through, I think they have made changes, and I do believe that hopefully that there is going to be an upward trend now in how things move forward, and that we do break these barriers, because I do think that's absolutely important. We've got about 5 minutes left, so I just wanted to quickly touch on. We'll finish with what you're currently involved in now, which is the Birmingham Adult Education Service. So you just want to quickly kind of summarise your role and what
Yeah,
it is you do?
I'm just working with them for a short term period to try and engage with the local community, because Birmingham Adult Education Service, as well as providing kind of paid courses for people to go in and get accreditation, and they also have a community learning offer, which is free courses, 6 week courses that they try and run in community. So things like survival English, maths, digital, arts and crafts, etc. This is about getting people on a journey of learning. And my role is to go out to the community organisations, to partner with them, so that we can provide these free courses to their service users, to their clients, to the people they're working with. So trying to partner with them. They also, one of the other roles is now also to look at businesses as well, to support businesses. So again, the service, if you have a number of vacancies and you can't recruit, the service can provide a free recruitment process for businesses, where they'll advertise their vacancies. They'll provide 2 weeks training to people who've been recruited, and then they put those people forward to the employer so that they can then interview them. So there's no expectation that people who come on these courses get employed, but there's an expectation that the employers will give at least an interview for people, because the 2 weeks is a kind of an industry technical experience, knowledge and training that they give, but also give some training around interviews, techniques, and on the job kind of training, how to apply for the job training as well. So we provide that as well. So I'm kind of working with, reaching out to businesses as well, to see if we can support them around that, especially in hard to reach kind of industries where they're finding struggling to employ people, hospitality, in customer services, etc. So we also do that as well.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. With all your experiences and what you've done, would you say that you're a bit of an influencer in how you can almost join an organization, or you can work with people or a particular project, and all of a sudden then you bring all these fresh ideas and make all these positive changes? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, the fact that I've been around for a long time does help, and the fact
yeah,
that I do have a lot of contacts in the community does help. So I mean, I would say I'm a kind of a social influencer, but I'm more I'm there to serve the public. So
yeah,
if I can provide a service to organisations, then that's what I want to be doing. And I have a certain skill set, like everybody does, and we try and use those skill sets for the betterment of oneself, but also for the betterment of communities as well.
yeah. I think it's been absolutely wonderful, guys. And guys, if you haven't sort of tuned in, or if you're just catching the end of this now, my guest Wahid Salim has been talking about so many fantastic things. We've covered community, we've covered adult education, we've covered topics ranging all kind of topics that are relevant, I believe, to whatever your creed is, or I think all of our viewers and listeners could benefit from this conversation. If anyone does have any final thoughts or comments, do leave them in the comments below. We won't encourage you to call right now, because we do have to move on to our next show shortly. However, Wahid, before we do end the show, what's your kind of final message to those people listening? What's your final reflections?
First of all, thank you for inviting me to the show. It's always good to come on and do these community shows. And my final thoughts are basically that don't give up. I know there's a significant challenge. I know it's hard, but with perseverance, with hard work, people will get through this. And we need to make sure, as a community, we are supporting people, and we're coming together, and we're looking after one another. I mean, that's the only way we can get through this, is by working together, and supporting each other, and ensuring that we look after ourselves, but also look after family and look after the community as well.
Yeah, well, what a lovely note to end on. And if people maybe didn't have time to ask you a question or they want to reach out to you, how can they connect with you?
Facebook, Twitter, or on Instagram. So I'm on all three social media platforms. Unfortunately, not Snapchat, too old for Snapchat. But do drop me a line if I can be of any help. Very happy to answer questions or come out and talk to people. Just reach out to me.
That's fantastic. Well, Wahid, thank you so much for coming on today and giving us an hour of, I would say complete wisdom and also, so many educational and knowledgeable nuggets, so we really, really appreciate your time for coming on our Community and Wellbeing talk show. Guys, that is time up for today's show. If you've enjoyed it, as I said, please do leave comments, do message our station. Let us know as well if there's any certain topics that Wahid touched on or recent talk show topics that we've had. Do let us know if there's something that you would like covered, and we'll try and find a guest to discuss that with us. So like I said, guys, please do keep following and tuning into our Community and Wellbeing talk shows. As I said, they are every week on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and myself on Thursdays at 8 p.m. But that is it for tonight, guys, and do stay tuned on Radio Aap Ki Awaaz. Thank you very much.